You want to know what I've been thinking about for a while now? No, we don't care. The new Z moves in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, because as it stands, we only have one for Kommo-o, but it's going to be a pretty big deal. Also, when looking at how powerful the Z move is going to be, I think it's really worth it just kind of like look ahead at a lot of the potential Pokemon that could be receiving new Z moves in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and this really just kind of cements what I've been saying almost since Pokemon Sun and Moon has come out, that a lot of the Pokemon that were introduced in the 7th generation, or a lot of the Pokemon that got buffs, changes, and little bits of tweaks, that they're almost intentionally underwhelming, and then we get to see with the new Kommo-o Z move that this is absolutely ridiculous. It's a Z move that hits both opponents, and then also gains stats at the end, and my guess is also does bonus damage, but it's kind of hard to tell when it's a Dragon type using a Z move against other Dragon types, but still, that's a pretty outrageous move, and even then, we have stuff to talk about on the official Pokemon website. It's been confirmed that these are going to be different and better Z moves, and there's going to be a lot of them, so I'm wondering how that's going to play into the whole idea of the 7th generation, also looking on into the 8th generation, but remember this part from the trailer where it's like, hey, that bracelet looks different, hey, that crystal looks different, what's going on here? Well, in Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon, the main character used a Z ring in order to use Z moves. In Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, the main character will use a Z power ring, which can use even more varieties of Z moves than the Z ring, and the games also feature new Z moves for certain Pokemon. Now what gets me here is that, and does that mean we're actually going to be getting changes to the existing Z moves as well as new Z moves for certain Pokemon? And from what we've seen with Kommo-o and already some of the pretty powerful existing Z moves, does Game Freak really want to crank the dial for Z moves that hard? Were they really that underwhelming for the 7th generation for what they expected? True, it's only one turn. Like a Mega Evolution, you get one Mega Evolution per battle, but that effect lasts the entire battle. With a Z move, that effect is for that turn unless you're getting stat boost for it, and even then, it just kind of seems like, it's not worth running a Z move in a lot of situations, and the Z status moves are the strongest ones, so it looks like what we see with the Kommo-o, they're combining these status aspects as well as damage, because I think the biggest issue with Z moves or Z crystals is that you lose your item. So you get to nuke one opponent, but at the end of the day, if you're running like choice specs or choice item or even a life orb, your damage per turn by the end of the second turn is already going to be higher than when you use the Z crystal. So it's good for eliminating a threat, and that's kind of it, but it looks like Game Freak wanted it to be more than just eliminating something and having like one turn to swing momentum. They want it to be a major impact in the game, which is kind of crazy to think about. Now, what about the Pokemon that could potentially receive Z moves in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon? It's like, are there only going to be 7th generation Pokemon receiving this change like we saw with Kommo-o, or are other Pokemon going to get it? Because, as we see, a lot of Gen 1 Pokemon received new exclusive Z moves, and then we also had the other ones for other Pokemon. Because if you think about it, when you just see the starter Pokemon get their own exclusive Z moves, like, okay, cool, it's just going to be the starters, maybe some legendaries, you know, very special Pokemon, but then randomly Snorlax gets it, and Eevee, and Pikachu gets 2 of them. So that's kind of what confused me, like, is it just going to be 7th gen for Ultra Sun and Moon, or are there going to be more Pokemon? And let's look at it a bit deeper, because when we're looking at Clangorous Soul Blaze from the Kommo-o, this is going to be off of Clanging Scales. That's going to be a move that is going to be modified and then give a crazy effect to that Pokemon. So and that's what happens with all of these other exclusive Z moves, that it takes a special move to trigger it for that specific Pokemon. So I'm wondering what that means for all the other Pokemon that have signature moves. Is this where the limitation is going to be? That's not going to be only 7th generation Pokemon, but it's mostly just going to be about Pokemon that already have signature moves. And in the 7th generation, this is where we also find an interesting little thing. There's a lot of Pokemon that have exclusive moves in the 7th generation. It feels like almost every other one of them. Alright, we have Shore Up on the Palossand, we have Oranguru with the Instruct, we have Beak Blast, Ice Hammer. I could list all of these and then the video would be boring, but you get the idea that it's ridiculous. And then we see the same on Kommo-o, there's the Clanging Scales. So I'm wondering like, it'd be ridiculous for Game Freak to put in the animations, put in all of the work, all the details for each individual Pokemon that has a signature move, at least in the 7th generation, but at the same time, you can look at some of the underwhelming ones. Komodo, it's a pseudo-legendary Pokemon, and arguably the worst pseudo-legendary Pokemon, but with the boost that's getting from the new Z move, that's going to be very usable. Delmas didn't really get a lot of play, Bruxish, actually, when you kind of look at the Pokemon that got exclusive moves, they seem intentionally underwhelming. Lycanroc, I don't think Accelerock's going to get it. It's also kind of like playing into some of the other aspects of the Pokemon. Like Lurantis, Z Solar Blade, gets the power of Z Solar Blade instantly. Yo, Z Solar Blade creates Sunny Day after use, calling it now. Something, you know, I can see a lot of interesting things happening like that. Maybe Trop Kick when Z Boost is going to drop the attack by 1 and plus Serena's attack by a certain amount, or maybe even do more. Because that's one thing about the Clangorous Soul Blaze, is that it doesn't become that Z move. That one of the things about the Z moves that we've already seen is that it just becomes that Z move and then it loses all the other effects. Even if you're using something like Hyper Beam, Hyper Beam just becomes the Z boosted Hyper Beam and then you don't have to worry about the drawback. But also if you're going to be using another move like Air Slash, you don't get the chance to flinch, it's just going to fully convert. So with this, I'm wondering if it's going to keep the aspects of that signature move intact. Clanging Scales actually hits both opponents and that's represented Z move, and then it gets more of an effect on top of that. So I'm trying to figure out, like, I think it might be easier just to cut out which ones might not work, but even for status moves, like Strength Sap, it could maybe just do a full heal with a much larger drain and then buff Shiinotic stats. Problem is, whenever you get into 4 times weaknesses, Poison is very common because of Fairy, Shiinotic has an absurd amount of weaknesses, so I don't know what you can do to necessarily save the Shiinotic. Baneful Bunker, though, if you go +2 defense, +2 special defense when using the Baneful Bunker on Toxapex, that's absurd. And then you also get the Baneful Bunker poison effect if they hit you. That seems like something. Also remember, it's a Z move. You only get to do it once. You don't get to spam all of the signature moves, all the signature Z moves, and have a non-stop line of buffs. So that's why it might actually be worth it to go super overboard on the Pokemon that weren't successful. But yeah, when you look at it, all of the Pokemon that got exclusive moves are the ones that we see the least in competitive play, even though there's quite a lot of usable Pokemon in the 7th generation. So I think that might actually mean something. Like Z First Impression, that could be freaking awesome. But what about other Pokemon? Now here's something else to think about. Whenever you use a Z-boosted exclusive move right now in Pokemon Sun and Moon, let's look at Geomancy, Trick or Treat, Forest Curse, even Conversion, it's going to boost all of the stats by 1. And we have that for Komodo. Is that what happens? So maybe no matter what you use, it's always going to boost all of your stats by 1 in the end, but then it's going to preserve the natural effects of that move as well. Now that's something scary to think about. Imagine Silvally with +1 everything. That's what the Pokemon is missing, honestly. That it's just slightly, you know, even though it has 95s across the board, still slightly underwhelming because it doesn't excel at anything. It can tank hits like a boss, but then it gets outsped by a lot, and then it doesn't have a lot of damage to back it up. So now, like, that's what we've seen with the other exclusive moves. And then we could see that maybe happening for some other Pokemon as well, and that could be very scary to think about. So yeah, Force Curse, Conversion, they all boost attack, defense, special attack, special defense, and speed. So that's going to be another thing. Is it going to be all of the signature moves get a signature Z move boost that allows it to +1 everything because Z moves didn't turn out to be as powerful as Game Freak anticipated? Is it just going to be this crazy amount of 7th generation Pokemon that get exclusive Z moves? Or what about others? Octillery. Octillery gets Octazooka. Z Octazooka could have some really strong damage behind it, maybe a 100% chance to lower the opponent's accuracy as well, just, you know, cut the accuracy, +1 to all your stats, and then that's just going to be what happens with the Octazooka, because I think this is also an opportunity to revive some lesser used Pokemon, in, like, not just the ones in the 7th generation, but other Pokemon that have Z move or exclusive moves that could synergize with a Z move. And then Octillery, it wouldn't gain much off the speed, but you know, if it can hit harder with its attack, special attack, and then be tankier on the defenses, while also having Moody, that could be a very fun RNG Pokemon to kind of gamble your Z move on, because, alright, what happens if you lower the opponent's accuracy, you get +2 evasion, +1 all of your stats, Octillery then becomes a very fun Pokemon, and then you can still have good damage on Octazooka, you can Scald, Ice Beam, and then maybe even like Rest or something. Well, Rest is risky, but if you're gaining defenses and stuff, you might be able to wake up before any of that happens. Rest, Sleep Talk, Octazooka, Ice Beam. You know, you can have some fun with it on the Octillery if that happens. And then there's Fire Lash. So Fire Lash's existence finally makes sense to me, guys, because it just came into play on Heatmore and made no sense. Like, cool. No one is using Heatmore. The Pokemon has been one of the most obscured and forgotten things ever, and it doesn't even have that great of a base stat total. Its identity is mixed. It's incredibly frail. So will a Z-boosted Fire Lash actually help the Pokemon? Because the effect of Fire Lash is really good. Does damage, lowers the target's defense. 100% chance. They're just going to be able to stack damage with it, but it doesn't make sense. It's a cool move. It's a signature thing, but why in the 7th generation? Why wasn't this put in the 6th generation with some other exclusive moves? Why wasn't this put in the 5th generation with the release of Heatmore to maybe make it a bit stronger? Now they're just kind of they're just kind of taking from other things. Like, oh, Lunge will always lower the target's attack. So now we just have another one that lowers the target's defense on a Pokemon that's never used, and nothing else gets it. And then there's other moves. What about Burn Up? Z Burn Up. Lets you get absurd amounts of damage, probably still preserves the effect of Burn Up, but what if it gives you +1 to everything afterwards? Typhlosion gets Choice Specs and Choice Scarf in one go, and then can still have some crazy damage to back it up, but loses Stab. So you're kind of getting the +1 special attack to make up for the Stab after nuking something, and then you still have speed, unless you could actually, like, see, the Z Burn Up, if it does, maybe it's not the best thing. It'd be better on Arcanine, which makes Arcanine an absolute monster. But if it doesn't burn up, then that means you could still use Eruption. You could still use some pretty solid options with a Typhlosion. I'm just trying to think about all of the other moves. And we have Beak Blast. Beak Blast, what would Toucannon do with +1 everything? So I think that's where Game Freak is going with this, and this might be a massive revelation. Comment your thoughts down below, because I think I might be onto something. Do you think it's going to be +1 everything? Do you think each individual Z move is going to have some kind of exclusivity behind it? Do you think it's only going to be 7th generation Pokemon? Do you think any Pokemon that has an exclusive Z move is potentially eligible? Not saying that every exclusive mon is getting it, but potentially eligible, and that some of the more forgotten Pokemon, like Octillery, like Heatmore, that exist, they should be respectable in some forms of competitive play at some way. You know, they have a nice gimmick to them. They have foundation to be usable. If they get that buff from the Z move, will it be enough to make them worth it? And maybe these Pokemon get special treatment, +2 to everything on Heatmore. Would that be enough to save it? Because you lose your item to +2 on everything. You know, you look at the stats, it's like kind of like a Mega Evolution, and then trading off all of the other things that happen. Other Pokemon like Crabominable. See, I think the biggest issue for some of these Pokemon are the Pokemon that just have absurd amounts of weaknesses and then are also slow. It doesn't matter if you go +1 everything, you're still going to get outsped, eat a super effective hit, and then your day is going to be done. Like Crabominable, its defenses aren't really the best. Like, alright, it eats a special attack Psychic. Even at +1, it's going to get outsped, and then bad things are going to happen. So boosted Ice Hammer into a +1 attack Ice Hammer is going to be absolutely devastating. So I'm going to see how this play ends up working around. I was also looking at some other moves like Revelation Dance. Moves that already have a solid gimmick behind it. It's a tough call because Oricorio feels like it needs something. The Dancer ability is absolutely insane. It is probably one of the top 3 abilities in Pokemon, but the Pokemon that receive the Dancer ability, or, you know, just Oricorio that gets it, it can't make the most do with it. Therefore, you have to do, like, some weird things like Skill Swap, Role Play, get Swords Dance, Dragon Dance. Quiver Dance with Revelation Dance is terrifying, but, I mean, Oricorio can't make much of it. It's just a frail little bird with alright stats, and I think that's kind of the best way of doing it, you know? Kind of frail, alright stats, doesn't really beat anything up, but once it starts getting those stats into it, if it goes unchecked for long enough, then it can snowball really well. And I'm wondering what a Revelation Dance could do if it could actually receive a buff off the Revelation Dance and then do more with that. So yeah, I thought that with the Revelation Dance gimmick changing its typing and stuff to match the user, maybe that actually might not be it. Maybe that'll be another one where, and I could see that, you know, if Komodo gets like in the groove, I mean, look at that dance. It's ready. It's going into that Soul Blaze. So because of that, I feel that Oricorio can have a really awesome dance to power itself up with that Z power. And I think this could be it, guys. So I don't really know what else there's to say. I hope this is actually a really awesome idea that people get behind. And I definitely feel that this is where the future of Z moves are going for Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.